Hey folks, when most people think of the Volkswagen Beetle, they picture this lovable little car puttering around town or maybe cruising down the beach. But there's an incredible side to the Beetle's history that most folks don't know about. Its amazing legacy in motorsports. Today, we're diving into the surprising world of racing Beetles. And trust me, these stories are going to blow your mind. Rally racing. Let's start with rally racing because this is where the Beetle really showed what it could do. Back in the 1950s and 60s, these little cars were taking on some of the toughest rally courses in the world. The European Rally Championship saw Beetles fighting against much more powerful cars, and here's the crazy part, they were winning. The Beetles' reliability and incredible traction from that rear-engine setup made it a force to be reckoned with on those treacherous rally stages. Baja bugs. Now, let me tell you about something truly special, the Baja bug. In the late 1960s, somebody had this wild idea. What if we took a Beetle and turned it into an off-road monster? The result was the Baja bug, and it completely changed off-road racing. These modified Beetles with their lifted suspension, cut fenders, and beefed-up engines became legends in the Score Baja 1000, one of the most brutal desert races in the world. The first Baja bug hit the scenes in 1968, and soon enough they were everywhere in off-road competitions. Drag racing. But here's where it gets really interesting. Drag racing. Yes, you heard that right. The humble Beetle became a serious player in drag racing, especially in the 1970s. Cow-look Beetles, as they were known, would show up at drag strips looking almost stock on the outside, but under that engine cover, pure madness. We're talking about highly modified engines, pushing out incredible horsepower, sometimes 4 or 5 times what the stock motor could do. These sleeper Beetles would line up against muscle cars and leave spectators absolutely stunned. Amateur racing. The SCCA, Sports Car Club of America, even created special classes for modified Beetles because there were so many people racing them. These cars were competing in autocross events, time trials, and even wheel-to-wheel racing. What made this so special was that average folks could afford to build and race these cars. While other motorsports were getting more and more expensive, Beetle racing remained relatively accessible. Engine advantage. Let me share something fascinating about the Beetle's racing success. It's all about that unique rear-engine layout. In wet conditions, having the engine over the drive wheels gave these cars incredible traction. Rally drivers learned to use the Beetle's peculiar handling characteristics to their advantage, essentially driving these cars like they were on rails through corners. It's a technique that became known as Beetle steering, and it's still talked about in racing circles today. Touring cars. And we can't forget about the European Touring Car Championships. Modified Beetles were serious competitors in their class throughout the 1960s and early 70s. Teams from Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands would field these cars with incredible success. They might not have been the fastest in a straight line, but their reliability meant they were often there at the finish when other cars had broken down. Legacy. The legacy of these racing Beetles lives on today. You'll still find them competing in vintage racing events, historic rallies, and off-road competitions around the world. Every time I go to a classic car race, there's always at least one Beetle out there, mixing it up with cars that cost 10 times as much to build. That's what makes the Beetles' racing history so special. It's the ultimate underdog story. So next time you see a Beetle cruising down the street, remember, you might be looking at the descendant of a serious racing machine. These cars proved that with enough ingenuity and determination, even the most humble vehicle can become a motorsport legend. That's it for today's deep dive into the racing history of the Volkswagen Beetle. If you've got any cool stories about racing Beetles, or if you've ever competed in one yourself, drop them in the comments below. Until next time, keep those air-cooled engines running.